want you to imagine something for a second. Picture yourself walking down a familiar street in your neighborhood.
Like a walk you've done 100 times?
Exactly. You know, the cracks in the pavement, the hum of the streetlights, maybe the ads plastered on the side of the bus shelter.
Right.
Now, I want you to imagine the sudden, chilling realization that almost nothing on that street,
Nothing at all.
not the lighting, not the layout, not the billboards, was actually built with your safety in mind.
It's a really unsettling realization because we tend to view our physical environment as just entirely neutral.
Just concrete, glass, and light.
Yeah, exactly. But the built environment has this immense invisible power over who feels secure, who
Yeah.
feels welcome, and, who is quietly pushed to the margins on a daily basis.
Right. So today in this deep dive, we are looking at how the concrete, the street lights, and the bus stops we pass every day silently dictate who belongs, who is protected, and who is left vulnerable.
Which is such a massive topic.
It really is.
Yeah.
And to figure out how our cities got this so wrong,
Well, to really understand the stakes of this conversation, we have to ground it in the visceral reality of what happens when public space fails the people it's supposed to serve.
right,
We have to go back to the early hours of Saturday, September 22, 2012, in the Melbourne suburb of Brunswick.
Brunswick is this like eclectic, vibrant area. It's got a massive artsy community, lots of live music, bustling bars.
Yeah, it's the kind of place where you go out on a Friday night with your colleagues and don't even think twice about it.
And that was the exact reality for 29-year-old Jill Meagher.
Mhm.
She worked at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the ABC, and she was known by basically everyone as this vivacious, larger-than-life personality.
And she'd just been out having drinks with her workmates.
Yeah.
So at about 1:30 a.m., she left a venue called Bar Etiquette, and she actually declined an offer to share a cab with a colleague.
Because her flat was, what, less than a kilometer away?
Less than a kilometer, yeah. It was a short walk down a busy, familiar thoroughfare, a route she had taken many times, but she never made it home.
The aftermath the next morning was just frantic. When she didn't return, her husband, Tom, was out frantically walking the streets by 4:00 a.m.
Oh, wow.
By 6:00 a.m., he was at the police station. And what followed was just this massive community-wide response.
Right, there are missing person posters on practically every pole.
Yeah, in a Facebook group that quickly garnered 100,000 likes. The entire city was just desperate for answers.
Now, the initial physical search actually yielded a red herring.
Oh, the handbag.
Right. A local resident found Jill's handbag in a dark alley off Hope Street. Panicked because of all the media frenzy, took it home, and then anonymously returned it the next day.
Which just muddied the waters.
Exactly. But the real breakthrough didn't come from a physical clue on the pavement anyway. It came from the invisible web of surveillance we all walk through every day.
Because investigators started pulling CCTV footage from local businesses along her route.
Right.
And they found her on the camera of a bridal shop called the Duchess Boutique. It showed Jill walking past at 1:42 a.m. But chillingly, the camera also caught a man in a blue hoodie.
Yeah, he had paced past the shop twice before she even arrived.
And then the footage catches him approaching her, speaking to her, and following her out of frame into the dark.
It's so unsettling. And from that single image, investigators triggered this massive digital dragnet.
Right.
They pulled telecommunications data and tracked Jill's mobile phone. It stopped pinging in Brunswick around 4:30 a.m. and started moving rapidly north.
And this is where the tech aspect is just wild. They cross-referenced the exact millisecond. Her phone pinged off a specific northern tower with the license plates of cars captured by an automated toll point camera.
On the Telemarine Freeway.
Yes. I mean, think about the digital breadcrumbs you leave on just 15-minute walk. A text, a CCTV camera, a phone ping. It's like an invisible net of evidence.
It really is. So the police used that toll camera to identify a white Holden Astra belonging to a man named Adrian Bailey.
And they tracked his phone too, right?
Yeah, which placed him right next to Jill on Sydney Road. And when they finally searched his house, the final nail in the coffin was finding Jill's SIM card in his laundry.
Just a masterpiece of modern detective work.
It is, but it also highlights a devastating limitation.
What do you mean?
Well, that digital net is flawlessly designed to act as a historian of a crime.
Oh, I see.
It caught the perpetrator with incredible speed. But surveillance is not a bodyguard. It was completely incapable of preventing the violence in the first place.
Because it's just watching.
Exactly. The camera couldn't protect her because the physical space, the layout of that dark laneway off Hope Street, created the vulnerability that Bailey exploited to drag her away.
Which really makes me wonder, how did a predator like Adrian Bailey end up freely roaming that laneway to begin with?
That is the big question.
Because Bailey's presence wasn't just a failure of lighting, it was a catastrophic failure of the legal system.
What's fascinating here is the absolute paradox of the justice system in this case.
How so?
The system is fundamentally designed with rehabilitation and individual rights in mind. But here, it completely failed to protect the community's most vulnerable.
Right, because Adrian Bailey was a known, prolific serial rapist.
Yes. Between 2000 and 2001 alone, he had been convicted of 16 counts of rape.
16 counts. And he was actually on parole when he attacked Jill.
Yeah.
He hadn't just been keeping his head down either. He had violently breached that parole by breaking a man's jaw in a totally unprovoked attack.
Right, and he even pleaded guilty to that assault. But some legal loophole allowed him to remain out on the streets on bail while he appealed his sentence.
It's just unbelievable. And the revelation of that specific systemic failure sparked an unprecedented public reaction in Melbourne.
Yeah. 30,000 people marched down Sydney Road.
Which is huge.
Massive. And this wasn't just an outpouring of grief for Jill. It was a visceral protest demanding structural change. People were just furious.
Because they demanded to know how the legal system could hold a known violent predator, recognize he was violating his release, and still let him walk into a dark alley on a Friday night.
Exactly. And the sheer volume of that anger actually worked. It forced a comprehensive review of the parole system by former High Court Justice Ian Callanan.
Right.
The result was a sweeping reform that completely flipped the script, prioritizing community safety over early release.
It became notoriously difficult to get parole if you had a history of violent offenses. The transformation was so profound, people started calling it Jill's Law.
It was a monumental shift. It fundamentally changed the culture of parole in the state of Victoria and closed the loophole that let Bailey walk.
But I keep getting stuck on this one point.
What's that?
We fixed the parole laws to keep dangerous people off the streets, which is great.
Mm.
But does a legal fix actually make a woman walking down Sydney Road feel any safer the very next night?
Right.
Because the law is completely reactive. It deals with the aftermath. It doesn't put a light bulb in the alleyway or change the physical environment where people actually have to live their lives.
And that is the crucial pivot in our understanding of urban safety. If the law is like the invisible guardrail, urban design is the terrain itself.
The actual ground we walk on.
Exactly. And our cities have historically been built with massive glaring blind spots regarding who they are actually designed for.
I always pictured city planning as just, putting roads where roads need to go.
Most people do.
But looking at the historical context in the sources, the design philosophy of the 1950s completely reshaped our daily lives. We moved from organic, walkable neighborhoods into these sprawling, car-centric suburbs.
Right. Homes were intentionally isolated by massive distances from commercial centers and workplaces.
And the society of that era operated on rigid gender roles. Men went out to work in the financial districts, and women stayed home in the suburbs.
The home was conceptualized as this remote, quiet refuge. But for the women living there, often without access to the single-family car, those pedestrian, unfriendly neighborhoods became intensely isolating.
It's like the physical design of the suburbs enforced the social role of the housewife.
Exactly. The lack of sidewalks, the immense distances to basic amenities. I mean, these were literal concrete barriers to independence.
And you can still feel the friction of that 1950s design today when you try to run errands. The research talks about this concept of mobility chains, and it honestly sounds like a modern nightmare.
Oh, a mobility chain is a perfect illustration of how gender heavily influences our interaction with urban infrastructure.
Right, because traditionally, transit systems were designed around a linear commute.
Point A to point B, the home to the central business district, and back again at 5:00 p.m.
But if you are the primary caregiver, which still disproportionately falls on women, your day looks nothing like that. Your route is a chaotic chain.
So true.
You're wrestling a stroller onto a bus to get to daycare, then walking down a narrow, uncurbed sidewalk to a part-time job, then back onto public transit to grab groceries, then back to the daycare, and finally home, often in the dark.
And you're navigating a city that was never built for that complex web of movement.
It's like playing a massive multiplayer video game. But the map was entirely designed by someone playing a completely different class of character.
Huh, that is a brilliant way to frame it.
Right. Your quests don't match the terrain. The businessman class gets a straight, paved, fast travel route right to the boss level. But if you play the caregiver class, you're stuck doing a labyrinth of side quests through terrain that actively drains your health bar.
With zero fast travel options.
Yeah, okay.
The businessman character has the infrastructure working for him. The caregiver character is constantly fighting against the environment.
It's exhausting.
When a city is built for the linear car commute, it fundamentally ignores the lived reality of everyone else. You know, the great urbanist Jane Jacobs wrote that cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only when they are created by
I
everybody.
really love that quote.
And historically, the people pouring the concrete were not the ones pushing the strollers.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Because I get that the old 1950s designs failed us. But surely modern planners know better now. I was looking at the data on how we light our parks, and honestly, I am totally confused. I've always been told that if you have to walk through a park at night, you stick to the brightest, most floodlit path.
Yeah, that's the common wisdom.
But this report is telling us that throwing a giant stadium spotlight on a dark park actually makes things worse.
How did urban planners get the biology and psychology of lighting so wrong for so long?
It comes down to basic human biology and what they call the floodlight effect. Planners historically operated on the assumption that blasting a space with maximum wattage automatically reduces crime and makes people feel secure.
Which sounds logical on paper.
On paper, sure. But data gathered from the Free2Be app, which tracked young women navigating cities at night, revealed the exact opposite. Overlit spaces make women feel completely unsafe.
Is it because of the shadows?
Mostly, yeah. It's because of how the human eye adjusts to contrast.
Okay.
A massive singular floodlight creates intense glare. If you are walking directly under it, your pupils constrict to handle the brightness.
Which means you can't see the dark spots. You literally cannot see anything in the periphery. The light creates a sharp drop-off, turning the surrounding shadows into an impenetrable, pitch-black wall. You are perfectly illuminated on a stage, utterly blind to your surroundings, while anyone standing in the dark can see you perfectly.
That is genuinely terrifying. It completely changes how I will ever look at a solitary street lamp in a park.
What actually increases both the perception and reality of safety is consistent, layered lighting.
Layered lighting.
Yeah, you need multiple, softer light sources that illuminate the environment evenly, lighting up the path, but also gently washing the surrounding trees and exits.
So you don't get those blinding contrasts.
Right, or those deep hiding spots.
Okay, so the physical illumination really matters. But the environment is also communicating with us psychologically, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's this whole section in the report on sexism in the city, and it dives into the subliminal messaging of our streets.
Oh, definitely. It explores the psychological impact of the spaces we move through. Public spaces are dominated by subtle cues about who belongs, who is valued, and who holds power.
So we mentioned that app called Free2Be, where young women could drop a sad pin on a map if a location made them feel unsafe or uncomfortable, and a happy pin if they felt good.
Right, based on their real-time feelings.
And researchers noticed a striking pattern in those sad pins. Women were constantly dropping them in areas dominated by male-named businesses, or areas with what they called transgressive names.
And often alongside hypersexualized advertising.
Right. But I need you to unpack that for me. Why does walking past a pub called the Dangerfield or a butcher named Mr. Smith's make someone subconsciously reach for their keys?
It's a phenomenon researchers call softcore urbanism.
Softcore urbanism.
Okay.
Let's break down the causality. When every street you walk down is named after a male general, every statue is of a male politician, and the businesses have aggressive, hypermasculine, or transgressive names. Names that signal rowdiness or rebellion, maybe.
Exactly. It creates a subliminal atmosphere. It subtly signals that this environment is a male domain.
And then you add the advertising on top of that.
Right. Imagine waiting at a bus stop at 10:00 p.m. and the entire side of the shelter is a towering, hyper-sexualized, objectified image of a woman selling perfume or lingerie.
You just can't escape it.
The physical space is actively projecting an image of women as objects to be looked at rather than citizens who belong there. It creates an environment where women feel subconsciously observed, excluded, and marginalized.
It's like the street itself is whispering, "This space isn't for you. You are a guest here." Or worse, you are the scenery.
That's a great way to put it.
That just has to have a massive toll on a person's baseline anxiety.
It has a direct, documented impact on mental well-being and feelings of security. It constantly reinforces an imbalance of power.
So identifying all these invisible flaws, the bad lighting, the hostile mobility chains, the sexist advertising, that's huge. But how do we actually fix a city that's already built?
That's the real challenge.
Because the really inspiring part of this deep dive is how communities are actively reclaiming these spaces. They're literally redrawing the map through co-design.
And the tech applications are proving incredibly powerful here. That Free2Be app we mentioned and similar platforms like the Gender Equality Map, they allow citizens to translate their lived emotional experience into hard, actionable data for city planners.
Which is amazing. Users can drop a pin to highlight a lack of pram accessibility or a blind corner or a particularly aggressive billboard.
Exactly.
I just love that intersection of tech and advocacy. The idea that you feeling nervous on a Tuesday night and dropping a little sad pin on your phone could literally be the data point that convinces a city council to move a sidewalk.
Or change a street lamp. It gives the power back to the pedestrian.
Right.
Another highly effective physical method gaining traction is the participatory gender equity walk.
I've found this fascinating. Instead of planners sitting in an office looking at blueprints, local women actually walk through a neighborhood at night with city council members.
Right, they walk the terrain together.
And they point out in real time, hey, the shrubbery's too high, I can't see around the corner, or this lighting makes me feel exposed.
It entirely removes the guesswork from urban planning, and it heavily promotes the application of universal design.
Universal design being the concept that if you design for the most vulnerable or extreme cases, you accidentally make life better for absolutely everyone.
Yes. If a council widens a footpath and adds curb cuts so it is easily navigable for a wheelchair user, they have simultaneously removed a massive barrier for a parent pushing a double stroller.
Or a kid learning to ride a skateboard.
Or an elderly person using a walker. If you cut back mid-height shrubbery to give a woman walking home clear sight lines, you also make that park vastly safer and more welcoming for children playing during the day.
And this isn't just theoretical either. There's an incredible, massive case study from Vienna that proves this works.
Yes.
Back in 1993, Vienna built an entire apartment complex called Frauenwerkstatt, which translates to Women Work City. It was designed from the ground up by female architects, specifically for women.
And it remains a landmark achievement in urban planning today. The architects looked at the nightmare of those mobility chains and designed the friction right out of them.
They really did.
They built circular courtyards so parents could easily watch their children play from the kitchen window while cooking dinner.
Such a simple but profound change.
Right. And they integrated kindergartens, pharmacies, and doctors' offices directly into the complex so you didn't have to cross town for basic needs. They ensured seamless, brightly lit access to public transit to support those chains.
They didn't try to force the residents to adapt to the buildings. They designed the concrete around the actual messy daily lives of the families living there.
Exactly.
And we're starting to see that localized approach closer to home, too. Like the Whittlesea Council developed specific guidelines mandating practical changes.
Things like ensuring community pavilions have clear lines of sight from all playing fields and avoiding dead ends in park layouts.
And requiring multi-gender baby change facilities so caregiving isn't physically restricted just to women's restrooms.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, all of these micro-adjustments highlight a core tenet found throughout all our sources.
Which is?
When a space is occupied by women and girls, it is occupied by more people in general.
Oh, that makes sense.
A space that feels safe and welcoming for a woman at night naturally becomes a vibrant, economically active, healthy hub for the entire community during the day.
But there is a massive caveat here. True democratic design can't just happen by occasionally handing a woman a clipboard and asking for her opinion on a park layout.
No, definitely not.
The research stresses that we need women in actual urban design leadership positions, not just as consultants, but as the chief architects, the lead planners, the directors.
Because without diverse leadership fundamentally setting the agenda and, the budget, we run the risk of just applying expensive band-aids to systems that are broken at their core.
So what does this all mean? We've journeyed from the heartbreaking, completely preventable loss of Jill Meagher, which exposed a dangerously broken reactive parole system,
Right.
to uncovering the invisible historical biases poured right into the concrete of our 1950s suburbs. And finally, to the innovative, community-led ways people are using apps and midnight walks to literally redraw the map of our cities.
It means we have to redefine safety. Safety isn't just the absence of crime, and it isn't a blinding stadium light.
Yeah.
Safety is an environment that actively includes you, anticipates your needs, and reflects your value in the community.
So tomorrow, when you walk down that familiar street or stand at your usual bus stop, I challenge you to look at your commute completely differently.
Notice the street lamps. Are you in a blinding spotlight, or is the path softly layered?
Look at the advertisements, the height of the bushes, the width of the pavement. Ask yourself, who is this space actually built for?
Once you start looking for the invisible architecture of your environment, the subliminal cues and the exclusions, you can never really unsee it.
I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to explore on your own. We've spent decades, centuries really, building physical cities with historical gender biases baked right into the bricks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we increasingly move our lives, our commerce, and our socializing into digital public spaces, into virtual reality and the metaverse, are we destined to hard-code these exact same exclusionary mistakes into our digital cities?
That is a very good question.
Or will we finally learn to build a world, physical or virtual, where everyone can simply walk home safely?